Well, it is a sad day in Pennsylvania when it's time to cut down all the ash trees. For those of you who aren't aware of that stuff, I guess there's a thing called the ash borer beetle. And if you drove through Pennsylvania and probably a lot of other places over the last decade or so, you've seen a lot of those purple boxes hanging in trees. And the reason those were hanging in the trees was to monitor the movement and growth and proliferation of those ash borer beetles. Unfortunately, they pretty much have devastated Pennsylvania's ash tree population. And the end result is going to be that there will be no more ash trees. It's some beetle that came in from overseas. It's an invasive species that's come here. And what it does, it eats it only likes ash trees. And it gets under the bark and it eats everything between the bark and the wood and basically rings the whole tree and kills the tree. And at first, it's the end of the world and all that stuff. I didn't believe it, but the truth is I can see it with my own eyes. Ash tree after ash tree here is dead and dying. Here's the thing about ash. It is great firewood, so I have no problem cutting dead ash trees, using them for firewood. That's not a problem at all. Down the road, I want to have a little bit of a sawmill and start doing some milling and stuff like that. Ash would be a great lumber to saw. I wouldn't have any problem with that either. So I'll probably cut some of these, keep some logs, that sort of thing. The problem, though, and the only immediate problem for me, is that there's a lot of these ash trees that are pretty close to the garage, close to the tractor shed, close to the house, and they can't be here. These ash trees, if they fall on something like that, they're going to do a lot of damage. Some of these are real big. So I'm going to give you a tour. We're going to walk around. I'm going to mark them. What I did is I got a roll of white tape, similar to what boundary marker tape that they use, that sort of thing. I'm going to walk around and use white tape for the guys so they can come here and cut the ash trees while I am at work. That way they can go through and do it all. When I come home, it'll be done. If I can't be here, at least it can get done and they know what trees to cut. Here is one of the reasons why I'm marking the trees. Now, the guy that I've used in the past to cut trees around here, I think he knows one species from another, but it is very easy to confuse this, and that's why I wanted to show you this. This looks like an ash tree, but it's not. It's got the same bark, same look to the bark, except the ridges have more flatter tops. If you look at this, it's kind of flatter in appearance. This is actually basswood. Different kind of species, whole different species. Ash they use for baseball bats, stuff like that. Basswood is a softer hardwood, and it is really good for it. Like they make guitar bodies out of it, for example, cheaper guitar bodies. It's not the best sounding guitar body wood in the world, but it certainly, there's been millions of guitars made with basswood, I bet. But basswood is nonetheless a different species, and I do want to keep the basswood around. These are things that down the road I will saw. A tree that's this size, this tree's actually probably 14 inches on the stump. In a few years I could drop this and then saw it up if I have a sawmill or something like that. Not particularly good firewood either, basswood's not. It's a little bit softer. But it has similar leaves, but the leaves are a little bit different. They're a little bit bigger than ash leaves. But that's what differentiates ash from basswood. And that's why I'm going to mark these trees. I don't want any confusion. I don't want them cutting the wrong trees. This little guy, on the other hand, is ash. And you can see it does have a very similar bark, but it is a different tree. It is a different species altogether. It has more pointy ridges, too. The ridges are a little more pointy than a basswood. Especially the more mature basswood gets real flat the bigger it gets. But they can be confused pretty easy. This one is a perfect example of what's wrong with these trees. If you look at the top of it, it's actually broke off already. But the top of this tree is actually laying on the ground right here. So it broke off already and died. That I can just block up for firewood. I don't need any help cutting that guy down. Here is a perfect example of the damage done as a result of the ash borer beetle. I don't know what peels the bark off like this, whether it's animals that are getting in there to get to the ash borer beetle, but this is a sign that these trees are dying. I don't know if the ash borer beetle actually does this damage, but this tree is dead, and it's dead because of the ash borer beetle. I marked about a dozen trees up here in this grove. I'm not going to let all of them get cut. A couple of them are still living all right, so until they're showing signs of the beetle, I won't cut them. I can have guys come back next year and do those if they're a problem, but for now they're nice and healthy. The other ones I didn't cut are all leaning to where I feel like I can get them with a chainsaw and I'll be able to tip them over without them falling on the building or anything like that. But the important thing is to salvage the roof on that tractor shed and the contents of the tractor shed. I kind of need those. So I'm going to get these out of the way so we don't have to worry about it every time the wind blows, every time you have a storm. You start thinking about, man, I hope those trees don't break off and hurt something. So hopefully this will alleviate that. The other thing about this Borer Beetle, I think the only hope for the ash tree is going to be the fresh young ash trees that are growing up. If all the ash dies off, like I think it's gonna, the younger stuff, the beetle itself may starve out and may go away and not be a threat anymore. And there might be a new generation of ash trees that grow up out of this and survive and keep that species going. If that doesn't happen, I don't know what can be done. You can't have a borer beetle resistant strain of ash. I can't imagine that would happen. I know chestnut trees had problems for decades and decades ago and were kind of gone, and then there's resistant strains of it. Elm, for example, when I was growing up, Dutch elm disease wiped out, and before that wiped out all the elm trees. We still have elm though. I cut them for fence posts sometimes. I cut the elm trees for mock scrape trees. They're awesome for that because they're a really dense hardwood that'll sit in the ground and not rot down. I use that, and I'm going to make a bunch of mock scrape videos later this summer, I'm hoping, when I get a chance to put in those mock scrapes after I get all the food plots tended to and all that sort of thing. So subscribe if you're interested in that stuff too. The elm trees though, they get to a certain size and die. That Dutch elm disease will kill them no matter what you do once those trees reach a certain size. The ash borer beetle, anything over 4 or 5 inches at the stump, the ash borer beetle is going to kill it though. That just seems to be the way it is with this, with the elm now, or with the ash now. So that's where we're at. Hopefully this will stall that progress here in the kingdom of Bunjie, and hopefully we'll be back to business as usual. Once these trees are cut, we'll have a winter's supply of firewood and all that good stuff. So we'll go from there. Thanks for tuning in. I'll give you an update after. I will post another video after the trees are cut, following up on all that stuff too. Like the Facebook page if you haven't already. Subscribe to Death by Bunjie for future videos. And until next time, all hail Bunjie! I marked about 100 trees. No. I marked about a dozen trees up here in this grove.